I didn't know if background noise could be
You're on, sir. It's time. Mr. Walden says we have 6:30, so we'll call this April meeting to order. If you will, bow your heads for a short word of prayer. Heavenly Father, we do come to Thee with humble and thankful hearts, Lord, thanking Thee that You let us live in the greatest country on earth, Lord. And we thank Thee for the sunshine, and we thank Thee for the rain also, Lord. In our churches yesterday, there were so many people that needed Thy healing hand, and we're praying for those, Lord, all that were mentioned. Touch their bodies and reach down and heal them if it be Thy will. Ask Thee to forgive us of all of our many sins. Help us do say something to bring honor and glory to Your holy name. And God, please bless America and bless Temple, Georgia. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
And do I hear a motion that we approve the agenda? Motion, Mr. Simmons, here a second.
I'll second.
Second, Ms. Ransom. Any discussion? Favor signify by saying aye. Public comment. Any public comment? Yes, sir.
I got about 3 minutes of your time.
We know who you are. State your name for the press and where you live.
My name's Brian Akery. I live here in the city limits of Temple. My address is 98 Ranger Street. Mayor, council members, and the general public. My name is Brian Akery, and I have been a post-certified police officer for the state of Georgia for the past 21 years. I'm here this evening to speak about the possibility of reducing the fine amount in possession of marijuana, and if caught with marijuana, this charge not being submitted to the state to be on your personal criminal history. In July 2016, against the advice of Governor Nathan Deal, the city of Clarkston, which is 1.1 miles squared, passed a city ordinance to reduce the fine amount of possession of marijuana and to have this charge not to be on a person's criminal history. Governor Deal said, "We should not have any municipality or jurisdiction of state government saying that they are willing to flaunt the law to downgrade or excuse what is otherwise criminal conduct." Governor Deal went on to say, "I do not approve of that, and I do not agree with the posture they are apparently trying to take." Despite the warnings from the governor, Clarkston City Council passed their ordinance, which from my understanding is exactly like the one that the City of Temple Council has before them to consider passing tonight. The City of Clarkston is almost 5 times that, the City of Clarkston is almost 5 times that Clarkston has a crime rate that is 27% higher than Temple. Last year, Clarkston's property values decreased 6.8%, and that's on their website. And I'll let you draw your own conclusions from that statement. Marijuana has been proven to be a gateway drug for other drugs. Currently, I do not know of any drugstore selling the green leafy substance for smoking, which means that you would have to purchase the green leafy substance from an illegal drug dealer here in Georgia. Who is going to drive to Colorado to buy less than an ounce of marijuana, then return back to Georgia to smoke it? I have never seen in my 21 years a person in possession of a medical card stating that they were legally in possession of marijuana in its green leafy state for their ailment. This is probably because if they did possess such a card, they were at home smoking the marijuana instead of driving around, hanging out with their friends, or at a fast food joint, or on a school campus. The City of Temple asks potential employees on their application before they hire them if they have ever been convicted of a crime and lists marijuana as one of those crimes. You must ask yourself, if someone from Clarkston came to Temple for a job and had been cited several times in Clarkston for possession, wouldn't you want to know before you hired them? Since the person had been cited numerous times, the deciding authority to hire that person wouldn't know if the person was being honest, because it would not show on their criminal history. Let's hope our next police officer doesn't come from Clarkston. In closing, marijuana is not the same marijuana as it was back in the 70s and the 80s. Through modern science, marijuana potency has been engineered to be up to 30 times more potent. Plus, it's more common to find a smoker of marijuana to be smoking marijuana cigarette laced with another substance. Let us not forget why someone would use marijuana illegally. Marijuana is a mind-altering drug. I do realize that some people do have a need for the THC that's in marijuana to help them with their medical condition, and there are Georgia representatives addressing those issues now. Carol Tomorrow is currently trying to attract businesses to Temple. Businesses are not going to come to Temple, and people are not going to want to raise their families in a city that is a pot-friendly community, which encourages our police officers to overlook the possessing of marijuana as a crime. We do not need to send any wrong ideals to the youth of our community by even entertaining this ordinance. Thank you.
Can he correct something real quick before we throw the governor's name out again?
Ma'am?
Can Mr. Osborne correct something real quick before we throw the governor's name out again? Can you explain where that misunderstanding came from, since you addressed that with Clarkston real quick, please? As to what it was that comment came from, and it was not the ordinance at all?
My understanding is that during the time the legislature was having its debate, that the governor's comments dealt with what he considered to be the decriminalization
To legalize it.
of marijuana, as opposed to the reduction of the fine.
The ordinance, which had been in place in their city for 40 years, which is already lower than the ordinance the city of Temple has ever had. So it was a 40-year ordinance. So anyway, that was what I want to clarify. Is that had to do with when someone asked about the legalization of it within the city. And did the city have power to legalize, which they do not. Thank you.
State your name.
Debbie McIntosh, 206 James Allen Place. I think there needs to be another perspective presented here when it comes to the cannabis. Would I drive to Colorado to get less than an ounce of marijuana and bring it back for my son who died of epilepsy, that marijuana could have helped him? You bet your sweet ass I would.
Ms. McIntosh, you speak to,
Yes, sir.
speak to me.
I would go to hell and back if 14 years ago I knew that marijuana, like they know today, can help people who could not tolerate drugs such as Depakote and other mind-altering drugs that they use for people with epilepsy. I also would have gone in hell and back 10 years ago had I known this with my dad with Alzheimer's, to have had 1 month more of clear thinking from my daddy to enjoy with him. You bet you I'd go to Colorado and wherever. But why, as a mother, if I had had that opportunity to help my son, Why should I have to decide between possibly losing my daughter and going to jail and then possibly helping my son to be able to live a normal life and just to live, period? Now, I know that some people, they're looking at this as a recreational drug. Gateway? No, sir. It is not. How many people in here have had a glass of wine or a glass of beer? Are you an alcoholic? Huh? Well, let me tell you about my ex-husband who was an addict, who was a prescription junkie, and he filled in with marijuana in between when he couldn't get his hands on the prescription stuff. There's two sides to every story. First of all, let's look at the history of cannabis. It wasn't even illegal until 1937. It was not a Category 1 substance until the 1970s. And guess what? My generation, we're the ones that started the whole damn thing in the first place, bringing it back up again. This is something that the time has come. Cannabis is an herb. It's not a manufactured, synthetic, make money for the pharmaceutical companies item. It is something that God put on this earth for whatever reason. I don't know. I don't know His plans. But I do know that all the research that they're doing today are showing that my son could possibly be alive today had he had the opportunity to take a little cannabis, whether it be an oil or a couple of tokes off a joint. I don't care. I just care the fact that he would be alive possibly. And to deny anybody that possibility is wrong.
Thank you for your comment. Any more comments? You can unhand yours. Yes, ma'am.
First off, the ordinance is not addressing medical issues. It's addressing the marijuana and the ounce or less and the ticketing. My problem with that is that teenagers, my name is Linda Walden, I live here in Temple. My issue with it is what's going to keep a child at a bus stop from taking an ounce or less with him in his backpack and sitting there at a bus stop and passing a joint around and letting the kids smoke it before they go to school? What's to keep this town from going into everybody, Tom, Dick, and Harry, and Miss Ransom said it in the newspaper, from walking down the street smoking pot? It may be okay for some people, but right now, the people, there is a consequence when you get caught with pot. There's a consequence to it. If there's not a consequence, and if anybody can, if they can afford pot, they can afford the $75 ticket. They're going to tell you, give me my ticket and let me go on. That's what they're going to say. The teachers in the city of Temple, done talked to several of them. They say that if this ordinance is passed, they have enough problems with children in school, keeping drugs out of school. They will go somewhere else to teach because they will not sit there and try to fight a system that promotes marijuana. You're trying to compare ourselves with Atlanta and Clarkston. This is not about cannabis oil. This is about potheads or whatever getting away with smoking their pot out in the open without any consequences. Right now, I could care less what you do in your own home, what you do in your backyard around your fire pit. But now you have a consequence. Now if they get caught, at least they're away from everybody. At least the kids think twice if you get caught with it. But if you let it go with a $75 fine and no consequence, there's nothing. You can get a ticket for speeding out here. It's okay for you to be going down Bankhead Highway going 66 and get a ticket and you get it on your record. But you can sit here and smoke pot and you get a $75 fine and go on your way. Clarkston is 1.4 mile radius. That's what Clarkston is. You can't compare us with Clarkston. They have over 12,000 people in a 1.4 area. They have 15 business licenses that have alcohol, that is alcohol license. That is 500 feet, 1,000 feet. Every 1,000 feet, you're going to run into a liquor store or a place that serves liquor in Clarkston. They're burglaries. They are 4,000 of those. Why do you think there's so many people breaking into vehicles, breaking into homes in Clarkston? Tell me. We're not Clarkston. The reason people move out here is because we're not Atlanta and we're not places like Clarkston. The industrial park over here, we just annexed 30-some acres in here. Who do you think's going to want to come in here with industry? That we are pot friendly? I mean, tell me, if you've got a family looking for a home, do you actually think Temple is going to be top on their list to look for a home to raise a family? I wouldn't. And I can tell you for certain that I've done know people's done called and said, y'all pass this, my house is going up for sale because I don't want my property values to drop. And what Brian said is true. Look on the City of Clarkston's website, on their own city page. Their property values has dropped 6.84% in 1 year. Go figure. Go figure. Why? And please look it up under the City of Clarkston. Look at it. I don't want to own a business here. I don't want to own a house here with property. My property value is going to be decreased because we're pot friendly. Thank you.
Thank you for your comment. Anybody else got any comment? Yes, sir.
Yeah, it's I went to school here in Temple a few years back, and I've just now walked.
Please state your name and where you live for the press, sir.
The press. My name is Clayton Bailey. I live in Temple over here in Amy Ridge. Is that good?
Yes, good.
My mother has multiple sclerosis. She lives over here off of 113. I went to middle school here at Temple. Well, actually, it was like the 8th grade. Grew up around here. We moved out to Los Angeles, my wife and I, probably 2004, and she had breast cancer, and she took medical marijuana to help her with her breast cancer, and I started learning more about it. I actually went and got a license, and I learned a lot about it. I went to Oaksterdam University, learned a whole lot about it. The thing is like now that we had kids, so we moved back here, be closer to the family, and there's really a big misconception about marijuana and the use of it, and I was the same way. I was really skeptical, but it's not like when you live in Los Angeles or Colorado or any of these places, like you walk down the street and everyone's just smoking weed. It's not like that. You don't. Very rarely will I be going through a park, and I'm talking about in East LA, in Pasadena, a place called Highland Park. Very rarely do you go around and smell it, and it's like legal there. Medically legal, but even if it wasn't, it's abundant. And you go into stores, it's really not what people think. Now, there's a difference between adults that have issues that are using it medically, and there's a difference between kids that are having problems dealing with social issues or not having, good, strong family values or whatever. Every teenager, every kid goes through a stage in their life where they want to try to seek some sort of mind-altering substance. Not all of them, but a huge majority of them. And especially in small rural towns when there's not a lot to do, it's hard for their parents to get them to baseball practice or to get them into this, that, or the other. They find social groups that they get with, and they experiment with things. The best thing that they could possibly experiment, if they're going to do this anyway, would be marijuana, not heroin, not crack, not all of this. And people could say that it's a gateway drug, but we could also say milk is a gateway drug as well, right? It's not necessarily the case. If people are going to do something, they're going to do it. If we make it illegal, it's kind of making an incentive for, it's creating an incentive that, that, hey, I'm going to go after these kids and I'm going to find them and I'm going to search their vehicle. And, the police, they have a job to do, and they're going to follow whatever laws and ordinances that they pass. And what's terrible is like when a 14, 15, 16-year-old kid starts to develop this reputation because he experimented with pot once or twice, or maybe even smokes weed or something like that, and he starts having this negative self-evaluation, self-concept about himself, and it just leads on. He starts feeling bad, but And I'm not saying that, we should just accept, kids walking around and passing joints around or anything like that. But I do know that there's just a big misconception about how kids and just people in general that smoke pot are. They're not all bad people. I don't smoke pot, but I know plenty of people that do, that are lawyers. I know that are accountants, that are, professional, make, $200,000, $300,000 a year, and they hold down full-time jobs, several, they're productive people. I also know people who drink alcohol consistently that are not productive people, that, drive down the road and can, dangerous. The effects are totally different from marijuana than any other substance that you take. So, sorry I came in late. I apologize. I just had a little bit of experience in this. I lived in Los Angeles for 9 years, and I've studied all the effects of it. Took the class at Amsterdam University. It's like a 6-month class, and learned a lot about it. Learned how to grow it, and it's not really what people think that it actually is, and it's really scary about the property values and stuff like that. If my property value, I would, if it was a town around here that it wasn't that big of a deal, I would move there.
That's what I've been saying repeatedly. But I want to add, can I clarify before we go on this anymore? Let me, a more misconception. No, I don't want you to stop. I just want to clarify. Another misconception. This ordinance has absolutely nothing to do with children. This ordinance applies to adults only. The state of Georgia has a juvenile court that the city of Temple already uses for juveniles. This is an ordinance that deals with the punishment put on possession of an ounce or less of marijuana with adults that would be presented the choice to go before municipal court in Temple. Juveniles are already handled through the juvenile system. So we're not talking about students, we're not talking about kids, we're talking about adults. Adults who would not be in the juvenile system. And I will bring it back to, it has to do with the fine amount, and if you are here for that and you want to hang around until that gets there, it's a lot more self-explanatory as well as to the purpose of this and what we're trying to do, like other areas around us. But just please keep in mind, as you hear both sides, which is great, is that we are not talking about children at all. We're not talking about a bus stop. We are not. That is a totally different issue.
I'm sorry. I didn't know.
Yeah.
Someone just told me that this issue had been brought up. My mother, I don't know if you guys understand multiple sclerosis, but she has totally refused to try anything outside of that. And medical marijuana has been proven to help what's called elasticity, and that is, all of her hands are drawn up like this right here, and she can't move, and she's paralyzed from the neck down now, and she has to have care 24 hours a day. She can't talk. She has to communicate through a screen. But this it could have really helped her, but because she's so scared of everything, she doesn't even consider it. So it's kind of sad. People come by, they'll see my mother, and they'll, oh, I'm so sorry. But when you live with somebody that has multiple sclerosis, it doesn't happen overnight. It's like a progression thing. So every time it gets a little bit worse, you kind of get used to it. So it's not scary for me to walk into my mom's house and see that she can't speak and talk or anything like that. But what is scary is that when people don't understand the positive effects that can come from this. And I know that I do realize now that this has nothing to do with that. It has to do with fines on it.
It has to do with lowering a fine to a point where you're not made to feel a criminal if you're within the city corporate boundaries. So please stick around, because this is progressive for this area.
I'm sorry.
No, it's great.
Thank you for your comment. Any other comment? We need to get started here. Yes, ma'am.
Yes, my name is Stephanie Womax, and I live on Highway 78 next to the dollar store. And my comment has nothing to do with any of this former discussion. I'm aware that there's issues and discussions about our city charter, and I noticed it was not on the agenda. And something as important as making changes to the charter or our form of government, I don't want to see that not addressed, and I'm looking for as much input. I've actually tried to reach out to a few of you and ask you your concerns and try to get a better understanding of what the problem is here. And I think this really we need to get it together. And I would like one suggestion. Can we not have each city council member's telephone number or email posted on our city website? The information for our city council members is on Carroll County's website and not updated. So just trying to even communicate with you folks about what is going on in the community is not always an easy thing to do. Thank you.
Thank you for your comment. Yes, sir.
Good afternoon. My name is James Bell. I am from Lithia Springs, Georgia. I represent the Georgia Care Project, a campaign for access, reform, and education. I've been involved in the cannabis issue for some time. I've been invited to various cities, Clarkston, Atlanta, Athens, Clark County, other cities for testimony and giving information. I think we all need to take a deep breath about this issue. I know it's going to be very emotional. I know you feel very strong one way or the other on the issue. You're going to hear some facts, and you're probably going to hear some half-truths and some misinformation come out during this process. All we ask that you consider the facts presented to you. I was trying to go over some of the issues. The issues in Clarkston, crime rate is what the crime rate is there. It was that way before they enacted the reform. It's still a crime there. It's still a penalty there. Since July, about 30 to 35 people have been cited. That's 30 or 35 people who did not end up with a criminal record. That's 35 people who were not shackled. There was 35 people who were not put into prison or behind a cell. Clarkston showed their disapproval by issuing a citation. This is not about children smoking marijuana. Quite frankly, sir, ladies and gentlemen, there's marijuana right here in your community. We don't have to go to Colorado. It's right here. You've got tons of it moving down the interstate every day, coming to the city of Atlanta. It comes here to Temple. What we're trying to decide is how do we best deal with this issue? Even one day in jail, a criminal record, all this. The gentleman made a great point. It does affect your job ability. That is, when you end up with even a misdemeanor on your record. Often people lose their college education grants and ability to go to school. They often lose their jobs. They often, a few days, a few months, a few weeks in jail, whatever, they often end up losing their homes over this situation. So you've got this problem, this issue in your community right now, and this is just one option. The Constitution of Georgia gives you an option under your state charter, under your city charter, to enact this law. And so over the next few weeks, I assume there's going to be some type of hearing. And I'd be glad to provide you with some testimony from Clarkston, from Atlanta, and some other places, some documentation on why you have the authority to change these laws. It's a matter of using a sledgehammer or a fly swat, and that's what we're looking at here. People who use marijuana are going to use marijuana. If 1 to 10 years in prison does not deter people from using it, it's really going to have no impact. It's really how this community, I think, is going to deal with that. And I just hope that everyone would take a deep breath, look at all the facts, and make a decision based on what's presented to you. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Any more comments? Okay. We need, yes, sir.
I just got one. I think people are getting off track with the medical marijuana. The ordinance has nothing to do with medical marijuana. It's for pot smokers that, are going to wind up, if it's passed, just they said you've had it all the time and going on and doing it again. So, I just want to clear that up. There's nothing in the ordinance that says anything about medical.
Okay. Any more comment? We need to
Get it out of the way.
get on with this. I'm going to appoint a committee in a little bit, an information gathering committee. I'll do it in my closing comments here. And we'll have plenty of time to discuss this and get all of the information that is available out there. And the city council cannot legalize marijuana. It's controlled by the state. All this is, the question here is reducing the penalty inside the city of Temple. Okay, that said, approval of the minutes of March 9th council meeting. I got a couple of corrections that I think need to be corrected on March the 9th, section 2 up there. In that state that we had 2 bids on that field maintenance deal. One was $11,000 from or something from River Bottoms, and the other one was $5,000 from Peak State. And on the other one, item number 6 is off the resolution. I don't think we ever voted on it, but I reminded Mr. Simpson that we had an ordinance to that effect in 2003. Those were my comments that I think that need to be added in. Anybody else got any?
I would say that the amount of the bid accepted, because that was the discussion, was about why we were going with a high bid over the low bid.
Okay.
And then I believe, is this what you've already corrected, Kristen?
And that's the other one we haven't got
Okay.
March 28th yet. So if nobody has a problem, we'll send them back to get them corrected and bring them back full next month. Okay, sir?
It's entirely up to the body, but they're just being these minor corrections. You're welcome to approve them as corrected.
Okay.
If you want to do that.
Do I hear a motion? We approve these March 9th as corrected.
Motion to approve as corrected.
My motion, Mr. Walden, here a second. Second by Mr. Simmons. Any discussion? Favor signify by saying aye. Okay, March the 28th meeting. There, I had, I'd like my comments added to number 1 here, where it said Mr. Walden asked if he could ask a question. Then I stated that because of questions that some council members made, that could have gotten us sued. Carter Crawford developed a list of questions that was that we asked to every applicant, and the mayor did not know whether Mr. Walden's question was legal or not, and maybe he could whisper in the attorney's ear, and then he could tell me whether it was legal or not. Be my correction to that. Do I hear a motion we approve them with these corrections? Got a motion by Mr. Simmons that we approve them with a correction. Do I hear a second?
I'll second.
Second from Mr. Rockwell. Any discussion? Favor signify by saying aye. Any opposed?
Abstain, I wasn't here.
Ms. Ransom wasn't here. That takes care of that. Old business, approve the purchase of a heavy-duty 52-inch lawnmower for the City of Temple Public Works Department. Mr. Everhart. Yes, sir. Come forward, please.
Mayor and Council, good evening.
Good evening, sir.
Per the last council meeting, you requested that I obtain 2 additional quotes for the lawnmower. I've done so. I don't know if the information is in the packet. If not, we have it here. Douglasville Ace Hardware is the lowest quote that we actually have. We have an additional quote from Howard Brothers, and this is from Lake Carolina Equipment.
Okay, y'all got the quotes there. Do I hear a motion?
Make a motion, we'll go to the lowest bid, Douglasville Ace Hardware.
Got a motion by Mr. Wallen, go to the lowest bill on Douglasville Ace Hardware. Do I hear a second? Second by Mr. Simmons. Any discussion?
I would just like to say that I appreciate very much the fact that you also took a copy of your approved budget and showed what line this was coming out of, and other departments to doing this. It would help tremendously in oversight to keep up what we're spending, so I really do appreciate it when you do this. Thank you, that's all.
Any more questions? All in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? That's carried. Number 2, update on the proposed city charter changes set forth in the proposed ordinances as presented by city attorney. Report, sir, I wasn't familiar with a report on the preliminary plans for city council workshop at GMA, but I am familiar with the training session with the state attorney general's office on open meeting laws. Mr. McRae.
Thank you, Mayor. A couple of things. After the last meeting, we had a request for everyone to provide me with comments concerning the charter. There were a lot of comments, a lot of different comments, and because of the difference in the comments, there's no way I can move forward to present anything with regard to the charter at this time. In lieu of that, and those issues associated with that, and let's talk about part one of what the mayor said, I would like to have a workshop that deals with personnel issues, the charter, things of this nature with GMA who does that. That was something I put in my memo, Mayor, the other day when I sent that to everybody. And I hope that perhaps GMA could do the workshop for us on open meetings, and that the AG's office would approve that. So I would ask that we be mindful of potentially doing that, and ask that the council would allow me to talk to the AG's office. One of the parts of the consent order is that we have a workshop on open meetings, and I'd like to do both at one time, talk about personnel matters. That was a specific thing that we were involved in, and see where we are with that with GMA's help. So that's what I have.
Okay. Okay, number 3, update on proposal changes in the operation of the City of Temple Police Department's training program. Chief Lee, it's you, sir.
Good evening, Mayor. Ms. Alden was supposed to have gave you all a thing that we revised the SOP, and we added into the last final page of where we're going to pay the officers for mandatory training that's required. Mandatory, that means you post, the only way they can take it is online, and that they take it online, that they not only on the off time, they get paid in straight time for it. That's the only added item we put on that SOP. That's something Mr. Burton had mentioned too, as well. I mentioned it to y'all last week, so if y'all would go in and we do it, y'all pay them, and be official.
Yes, sir.
You're saying that they won't be doing any of it on their own time anymore, even on?
No, just mandatory. You know, we got this use of force and stuff that post created now that we have to take. You have to do it online only. Okay. And it's like a 4-hour, 5-hour course, and it's another course that's 2 hours. Can't remember that name of that course yet, but it's 7. I think it's a total of 7 hours. And sometimes it's a GCIC course that you have to take online only. You have no choice. So if we have to, if it's mandatory that they have to take it online, I'm saying I'd like to give them a straight time pay, not to do it on duty and get double pay. In other words, they come to work, they sit in the patrol car in the parking lot, take the test, they get paid hourly, and then get paid by post. Get paid by us at the same time. Versus if they get paid by this, taking this at home online, they just get straight time. In other words, we won't be occupying 5-7 hours at home and not getting paid something that you're supposed to do and you shall do.
Understand.
And that kind of, that'd help our officers a lot versus with some of the training hours as well, so.
Ms. Ransom.
That's my next question. So what is the mandatory hours per year to keep their certification up?
20.
20. So this 7 will then go against what you already had in the budget for 20 hours per training per
Yes.
officer. Am I getting that right? So it'll just be, instead of doing the 7 hours that they're already in the budget for them to receive 7 of the 20, they'll just be paid to do that at home.
Yeah,
Versus
they
going to
do
a
it
class.
on, yes, versus going to the class, and we gotta help ourselves. So now you got some officers, like say, all officers don't like to go to training, some take all the training online. We had one officer, excuse me, he had 40 hours online. So now, and that still helped us out, we didn't have to pay for all this online training, versus the officers that do go, we still have to pay them when they go in their transportation and so forth.
Because I remember the last time it was being criticized because some officers took it upon themselves to get more training and didn't turn that in for, to be reimbursed. Is that correct?
Yes, sir.
So that's why some officers had a lot of training, other officers just getting by on the minimum, correct?
That's right.
Any more questions for the chief? Yes, sir, Mr.
I
Rockwell.
just had 2 things. Thank you for owning this. And it should help clear up a lot of discrepancies. And if anybody's doing any training for this city, they need to be paid for it, whether it's a little bit or a lot. If they're working, if they're training, they're working. Whether they're at the academy, learning, they're an employee of the city and they're getting paid. But I just want to say thank you for being proactive and responding to without being.
Appreciate it. Like I said, on that training, keep in mind that's that mandatory, because you got an officer can sit here and get over 40 hours of training, and you can't balance your budget like that. If I got 12 officers over here decide they know they can get paid by every class they in, that's every hour class, that's the hour pay they get, and they come up any given time at the end of the month and say, here's my 30 hours online, here's my 30 hours, my 30 hours, my 30 hours, and then I'm done. So that's why I incorporated and said that we need to do just a mandatory, the ones that the posts only allow you to take online. And if they're making them do it, I want the officers to get paid.
Okay. Yes, sir, Mr. Osborne.
We're not asking you to take any action on this. This is basically an information report.
Anybody else got any questions for the chief? Thank you, chief. Update report on the ongoing review of the City of Temple's employee handbook and personnel procedures and procedure ordinances of the city of Rockmore. Mr. Osborne.
Yes, let me make a brief report on that, but also while I'm making that report, Kristen, you have, just a minute ago, Mr. McRae was talking about the thing with the Attorney General's office. To all of you, all of you signed what we're going to pass around to you, and so you can sign it while I'm making this other report. The Attorney General's office apparently lost the original, and they want another original, so we're asking you to sign. This is exactly the same thing as you signed before. If you don't feel comfortable with signing, now stay after the meeting and we can go over it, but we do need to get that through the AG's office. Now, item 4 on the handbook, as you remember, Mayor Pro Tem Bracknell had talked about at the last couple of meetings that we needed to get back and be paying attention to what we talked about doing on this. We're not proposing to have a discussion tonight so much as calling your attention. We've given you another copy of the Rockmart Personnel Policies and Procedures Ordinance. We'll ask that you take a good close look at it. I think all of you have a copy of the employee handbook. If you want another copy, or if you need a copy for whatever reason, Kristen has some extra copies she can provide to you, but basically this is a report, and especially since Mr. Bracknell's not here tonight. I'm not sure what he might have said, but really just to say to you that this is something we need to go back and take a close look at, and I assume that y'all can review this during the next month, and we'll come back, say at your next regular meeting for whatever discussion you want to have.
Did you have your hand up?
Yeah, I had a question. So did the Attorney General's office contact the attorney to tell you they lost that? The first one? No? Well, can you get with him before I sign that to make sure? Just because I only signed it saying I acknowledge it happened. I'm a little confused while we're signing this twice.
I don't think there's anything to do other than sign it again. If they say they don't have it, I don't know why they don't have it, but I think we got to sign it again and send it to them because they haven't set up our training yet.
But have you looked over that to make sure it's the same as what we had again?
I will look up, I have not.
Okay.
It's printed from the same document that
All right.
was our document, but I certainly don't mind looking
Okay.
at it again. But we've got to contact them, send it to them again, and I told the administrator will send it to them certified mail this time. And then I also want to ask them if GMA can conduct the training for us. So I'll do all those things.
More questions? Go ahead and Rockwater manager form of government.
They have a city manager.
Okay, we have a mayor and council form of government.
I just have a comment on that. You know, I did, I haven't looked over it this month, I looked over it the month that it was placed in our packet to begin with. And yes, it did run on a manager form of government, so one thing that, you know, which I've stated I'm fine with, if the council wants to step all the way out of the promotions and stuff, that's kind of what this does. And so as long as, you know, they understand that it's, you know, it's putting that day-to-day completely in that control. There might be a few things in here that have to do with benefits and stuff that are different from ours that may have to be amended. You know what I mean? Where it's not the typical, I mean, you know, what I mean? So before it's adopted as exactly as Rock March, there are other areas, I remember marking at the time, that would have to be addressed with our benefit program where we have some that are grandfathered in for benefits, some employees that are not grandfathered in who don't receive the same spouse or dependent benefits. We have other issues. So just keep a note when we get into that benefit portion that we definitely do things a little different here.
Sure.
Okay?
Shouldn't we have a separate work session to do that, to go over the handbook and compare the two and make changes or to Rockmart or whatever, rather than trying to do it at a council meeting?
Well, I think the first step is for you, and obviously that some of you have already been looking at it, is to familiarize yourself with this, and maybe a couple of others you want to look at.
Yeah, I've read it.
And then I think the main thing is regardless of how you look at the Rockmart or whatever, is to look at making some forward movement to decide whatever you want to do. If anything.
Okay. Any more old business? New business, consider the authorizing the disposal of certain city property, being the 2 empty trailers on Johnson Street, which once housed the Temple Police Department, by declaring them surplus and advertising for their sale. Mr. Osborne.
We've got a attachment here, a tab, basically, as we've talked about this over the months. Both of the trailers are now empty. Giving you the correspondence between myself and the Assistant Superintendent, Mr. Jones, which the Board of Education has said the quote, the City Council is free to do with them as they please. What we'd like to do is to advertise them for sale. We will need to do that because we're certainly hopeful we're getting more than $500 from the sale of these. As the mayor said, what we're looking at is a motion for us to appropriately advertise for the sale and disposition of this city property.
Your motion.
Motion to advertise.
Motion by Mr. Walden, here second. Second by Mr. Rockwell. Any discussion? Yes, sir.
The trailers, when the sale of the trailers occurs, that is that police department money? Is that city money?
It came from the school system, so that's the big question.
So it'd be go back into the general fund.
It was donated, and I believe the donation offset the general fund at the time. We had to show the donation and then subtract the donation.
The chief is going to want to make a comment, but the only thing I'll say is that some of the money that has been put into those for improvements were drug funds. And I think we'd have to look at that. So Chief, now 100% of what's been done for the value, 100% of the value would, I don't know that we would ascribe to drug funds, but to the extent that there were improvements made in the buildings, that would have to be taken into account.
Yeah, we go,
Ma'am, yes, ma'am.
don't hold me to it, the exact amount. I'm sure we can get a printout from Sarah, but I believe we showed a donation of $50,000 within the general fund, and we offset that by $50,000 as a cost offset. You know, you have to show the value coming in, the value going out, and there is paper. So I believe it was somewhere around $50,000 that it showed the donation value of those trailers within the general fund. So that's definitely something to look into when you're going to redeposit.
I won't make any comment on what the figure might be, because I
It
don't
was
know.
Sarah, she could pull it.
But the trailers probably have very limited value.
Chief, you want to get in on any of this discussion now, sir?
And the way y'all start that. What was it, y'all saying about your question?
The question is, who's going to sell it, the police department or the city?
I guess the city can sell it, but I mean, I had made a proposition with Mr. Ogden, if I sell it, I won't have the money for the police department, and I thought that would have been fair enough, but he said you gotta get with the Board of Education and get all the paperwork and all this, whatever you gotta have done with it. But anyway, those trailers are sold, we did put quite a bit into those trailers, but the city did come in and help us at that time. I wanna say that we had like between $5,000 and $7,000 that was spent in the drug fund to come in and put the walls and bathrooms and stuff up, and we ran short. And the city had to come in and help finish paying the rest of the money, so we have to complete both the construction on both of the trailers. So that's why our money got stuck in there. So I think if we sell it, we need to get some of the money.
You know how much of that drug funds was pot?
I'm not for sure. No, this is from the money we had off the
It's all in the
interstate.
state.
Yeah.
That's what it was. So I mean, whatever we come up to, if we sell it 500, then deal. But if we get some thousands of these trailers, I think we need to get some kind of percentage of to go back, because that's how those trailers was developed. Because initially when we went and got the trailers from Villa Richard and went and looked at them, they were just hollow trailers, just solid, they're hollow. And I came in and I designed all the rooms and offices on them and bathrooms on them. And then we used some drug funds, we were running short, and the city had to come in and help us out. This was back 4 or 5 years ago. So if we sold, I think we need to get some of that money.
For your consideration here, this is by declaring them surplus and advertising for their sale. I guess we can talk about the money later, because it's going to be quite clear the city's going to lose and the PD's going to lose on this deal.
Well, the PD gonna lose, the city ain't gonna lose anything, really.
Then the city,
They're gonna give it to us.
So we put money in as well.
Yeah, oh, yeah, on that half there, yeah, okay, yeah, okay.
thank you, sir. Got a motion and a second. Any more discussion? All in favor by declaring these trailers up there surplus and advertising for their sale and giving Mr. Osborne the authority to do so, let me know by signify by saying aye. Any opposed? That's carried. Okay, number 2, staff report on the status and development of the 2017 capital funds program for the city of Temple and on the anticipated date of its final approval. Mr. Osborne.
You'll go over to your next tab, it's entitled Fiscal 2017 Capital Budget. And as you know, back in December, you did a very limited capital fund budget, only $48,750. And that was what we needed to do for our match with the GDOT, the LMIG program. A couple of things, so I do want to point out to you, we now have received back the entire $100,000 payment from the Georgia Department of Natural Resources. This was money that we had to send to them to move the Land and Water Conservation Fund project along. As I said, we got that money back. Of that $100,000, you previously had authorized the expenditure of $23,770 of that amount for the re-roofing of the senior center. You approved that late last year. This leaves about $76,000. And I would ask that you not look at committing any of those funds until Recreation Director Joe Wilson has prepared a report to you on improvements and installations that need to be made at the fields that have been constructed under the Land and Water Conservation Grant. He and I talked about that this morning. I expect us to be able to come to you at your May 1 meeting with a proposed budget. Now, in just a minute, you will be looking at the possibility of providing funds to buy 2 police vehicles. One possible place to get that money, and I think all of us recognize that as we worked on the budget late last year, we were really looking pretty much at squash to pay for capital projects during this fiscal year. Sarah Hefty has determined that a little over $68,000 is due the 2008 squash account from the general fund. And we had, before that $100,000 was returned, we had about $5,300 left in the 2008 squash program. So when you add those two together, the $68,000 that's being transferred in, the $5,300 that's there now, that basically gives you a little more than $74,000. When we get to the police department item in just a minute, you'll see that the 2 vehicles purchased and equipping is a little over $74,000. So that would be one option that you would have. On the top of the next page of the report, basically, we will need to decide at some point, you don't have to do it tonight, but at some point we do need to decide what you want to do with your capital budget. My only comment was I do believe that you need to keep holding the 2015 splosh revenues for debt retirement payments on water and sewer bonds, certainly until we have a better idea of some things on that. But that's my report to you. And if you have attached a copy of the memo from Sarah, which just gives you some additional information. If there are any questions, I'd like to respond.
Yes, ma'am.
Yeah, I've got a couple of questions. First off, the last time that Howard Ray came to us, the stuff that we had to get done and finished before they would release the check, we're going back months because they didn't release the check when finished. We worked with Daryl, I believe, to get that done. Am I mistaken in remembering that was something close to $20,000 or $30,000 that we paid for that? And there wasn't that kind of money in the 08 squash. Did that not come out of general fund or did it come out of 15?
No, this was what you're talking about, I think, was the dealing with stormwater management.
At that place, before they would release the check, we had to have that fixed.
Well, if you're talking about the on-site work, that was part of what was paid to the county, the $180,000 check. We got back $100,000, so it wasn't $30,000 that had to be paid, it was $80,000.
So where was that paid out of? Because there wasn't, that amount wasn't left in 08 squash at that time, was it? I thought some came out of
Yes,
general.
that came out of the 08 splash. There was about when we paid the $180,000, that left us about, I believe, about $13,000 in 2008.
Then my next question with this little update, because it's just me reading, so correct me if I'm wrong, but what this looks like to me is we finally got this check back. The first I heard about this upcoming Max Grant check was the month I took office, so we're talking 3 years before we finally receive this check. We're going to have roughly $76,000 of squash money deposited back into 08, but then you're suggesting that we continue to tie every bit of our 15 squash to make a bond payment because the water and sewer fund isn't performing. And I voted no on the budget because of that, because I believe that when people voted for their squash, it was to retire a balloon note, not to be making our yearly debt. So if we're looking at $73,000, this is all any department's gonna see as squash money for quite a while. So no other department, not the rec, not the senior center, not public, they're not gonna be able to use that squash money coming into 15. The pump station, I mean, the city depends on that squash money to do our upgrades, to start new projects. And so I guess if 76,000 or 74,000 is all we have left to freely spend, then we're gonna tie that up into the PD into 2 new cars and no other department's gonna get anything for a year or 2?
No, I said that I didn't see spending any of the 2015 splash dollars at this time, but later in this fiscal year, I think we need to be able to have a capital program that would look at these other. And by that time, I think we need to have a plan for looking at having to deal with the water and sewer payments. But at the moment, we don't have such a plan.
Okay, so then I guess my plan is.
And we do know that, that at the end of this year, by the end of this year, we'll have about $600,000 that will have to be paid out on water and sewer.
From squash.
From some source.
Okay, so that's my question. So I guess that brings me back to take our sewer plant. A lot of the repairs are costly. If they were new repairs, they were considered capital projects. They came out of the capital budget. Do you feel safe putting this $74,000 into 2 police cars if we had a major repair that we needed to make on the plant and we've tied up the 15 squashed with a bond payment? That's all that concerns me.
2 points, and I think what you're saying is a lot of merit to it. 2 points, so is that we do have the need for the 2 police vehicles, and this is a way that we can pay for them with funds that we have available. We do have money in the 2015 splash, and when you do your capital budget later in the year, you may well look at using some of that money. I'm just saying, I don't think we're ready to make that decision now because we need an overall plan with the water and sewer. But if we had some major costs, say at the sewer plant, you do have the 2015 funds in the bank. And it would be a matter of the council making that decision.
Question.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yes, sir.
So, Mr. Osborne, it goes from one paragraph of saying we need to wait on a report from Joe. Let's just say, for example, there's $25,000 worth of improvements that need to be done there. Well, that in fact doesn't leave us with $76,000. It's only going to leave us with $50,000.
No, those are 2 different
Two
amounts.
different funds.
The 76,000 that's left over from the 100,000 repayment we just had, that's what I'm saying we shouldn't spend until we get the report from Joe and y'all analyze that and make the decision. In the next paragraph, Sarah has determined in reconciling interfund balances that there's $68,600 that is due from the general fund to be paid to the 2008 Splosh Fund. And we have in that fund, before you add back in the money, the $100,000 from the state, we had $5,350 in that. And talking about the police vehicles being paid with that $68,663 being transferred into 2008 Splosh from the general fund, that's due because basically the general fund had in a sense borrowed that money and now it's being transferred back through the audit process. And then you have about $5,300 in there, and that gives you a little over $74,000. But those are 2 different pots. I mean, 2 different amounts.
So there would be $140,000 in the 08 squash.
If you didn't spend anything and you put that in, you would have yeah.
So are you just gonna make the transfer?
Any more questions? Okay, that's the staff report on that. Number 3. Consider awarding to the successful bidder the purchase of 2 floor vehicles for the police department, with one being a sedan, the other being a utility vehicle to be charged to the city's 2017 capital project. Chief Lee.
You'll turn over to your next tab, you'll see what the chief will be talking about, possible purchase of 2 police vehicles. But what you've got is the cover memo that simply points out the chief made contact with 4 dealers, who got their quotes, and then what the chief is going to tell you about is what those quotes were, or whatever discussion you want to have, and then whatever decision you make.
Basically, it's just, we went to 4 dealerships, local, and got quotes on 2 vehicles, one a sedan and one was a SUV. And the one that was the lowest of all was Don Rich this year, which was a total of $48,653 for both vehicles. We had Wade Ford, which was $49, and Pioneer $49, plus Allen Vigil was also $49. So it's kind of like every year when we purchase vehicles, they going back and forth. You might have one lower this year, next year he $2,000 on somebody else. I guess it's putting how their stock comes in or whatever. But anyway, Don Rich was the one with the lowest bid at $48,653. And the total cost of buying from Don Rich and equipping both vehicles was $74,542.
Any questions for the chief? Mr. Walton.
So that's the total.
Was anywhere to get a state contract price to where you didn't have to bid them, or would it be lower or higher, or?
A state contract price? I can look into that, but I mean, my thing is they fluctuate. You don't want to be stuck with nobody having to buy them. Every year you do a contract, you stuck with them, and they decide to go up the next year, whatever they're going to give it to you at their price, because you got a contract with them. You know, it ain't that they're going to give you that same vehicle at that same price every year. So if we had to buy more of 2 vehicles and we buy more in that year, then that's a great idea. You get what I'm saying? But we buy 2 here, next year it could be another car come out that they sell the Crown Vics again, and now we won't get a Crown Vic, but we don't have a contract with a Crown Vic contract. We got a contract with the Ford Taurus and whatever we got here. Therefore, he gonna say, well, I didn't sell you them for that amount. This is a different car. So my thing is just do what we normally do: get contracts and get the lowest bid.
I thought you could just do a contract 1 year and do whatever you wanted to the next year.
Yeah, I haven't looked into that. I was also informed, Mr. Aker just had mentioned to me, and I had heard about, I think Temple did that years ago, is leasing cars, where you lease them and then you pay, at the end of your lease, you pay $1, something like that, after you pay leasing for the vehicles a certain many years, then at the end of the contract, you pay $1, something like that. I need to look into something like that as well, but for now, right now, just to get the vehicles, just what we're looking at. But I do want to check out that leasing thing where they had mentioned with the savings, but my thing too, if we do that, it can put us in the bind next year. You will never know, because at the end of the year, you still got to pay these cars. You got to pay for these cars one way or the other. And we don't know what our finances will be looking like a year from now or 2 years from now. So I just kind of rather, we got the cash now, we got the money now, buy it, and then we worry about next year.
Didn't we buy 2 new ones last year, or we're trying to get 2 a year?
Yes, sir, because back here, just before, right when I came in on chief, we went 4 years without buying a vehicle, and now the fleet has gone down just today, Cliff just informed me today that we got to put 2 transmissions in the car, so what I'm trying to do now is find out a good deal on where we can get some transmissions that are not, they're $2,000 a piece. So we can't keep fixing these old cars. You get it, we got 12 officers over there, and we got 5, 6 new cars, and then the other 6 is just falling apart. So, and that's from the back in 2013 on back, we didn't get new cars for 4 years. The city stopped buying cars, and it put us in a bind now.
$780,000 worth of drug seizure money, and y'all didn't get no phone.
No, that money was gone. I mean, pretty much. But what I'm saying is, back in 2008, if I'm not mistaken, 2008, 2009, that once that the council had approved us to get 2 new cars per year, and we hadn't got any cars since 2009.
That was not your fault. Okay, any questions for the chief? I hear a motion, we consider awarding this to the successful bidder, whichever one y'all choose. Which one would you choose, the lowest bidder? The lowest bid. Okay, that would be Don Ridge Ford. Got a motion by Mr. Simmons that we purchase these 2 cars from Don Ridge Ford. Do I hear a second? Second, Mr. Rockwell, any discussion?
I'm pleased to say that we're got a low bid from one within the county.
Any more discussion? All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed, that's carried. Report by the city administrator on the annual review of the city's clerk performance and her recommendation based on this review, Mr. Osborne.
I gave you a cover note that, of course, on a continuing basis, we are doing annual reviews of all of the employees. Department directors will do those on his or her staff, and then I review them. And also send to the mayor to take a look at. The department directors, I do those. But the city clerk, of course, has a little special relationship with the city council, that being one that you work most closely with. What I have done here is I've provided you with a copy of my annual employee evaluation of your city clerk, Kristen Ettridge. Don't know if you've had a chance to look at this or not. Basically, that is my evaluation and my recommendations concerning Ms. Ettridge in terms of what she would receive on the merit increase, and of course the cost of living. You provided money for that to all employees. If you did not agree with my evaluation in terms of what I was proposing in terms of any salary change for her, then you would need to take some action. But if there are any questions, I'll be glad to respond. But primarily, I just wanted you to have a first-hand look at my evaluation of her and what my recommendation is concerning the merit increase for Ms. Ettridge.
I hear a motion we approve Mr. Osborne's, that first by Mr. Simmons, Mr. Osborne's evaluation of the city clerk. Here, second. Second. Ms. Wall, now any discussion? Yes, ma'am.
Yeah, do we have to approve this? That's within your authority to do, correct?
Well, what if you, I don't know that you have to approve it if you wanted to override my recommendation, I guess.
So if
that's
we're
what
not
I'm
wishing to
saying.
override, we just need to leave that as it is in our packet, correct?
That would be, I'd leave that to the attorney, but in other words, unless you object to what I have done, then what I've done would stand as my evaluation of the city clerk.
So we would need a motion to object, not to accept.
We're now fixing to get the option to approve Mr. Osborne's deal. Any more discussion? All in favor, signify by saying aye. Any opposed?
Abstain, because I don't think we need it.
That is carried. Okay, report on discussion of an ordinance to change the reduction in the amount of fine imposed by the city of Temple if the individual is found guilty of possession of less than 1 ounce of marijuana with no intent to distribute and to have the first reading of the said ordinance. Mrs. Ransom.
Okay, I'm gonna start this off with a couple of things that are explanatory, and then I want to bring the council in, if y'all are willing, into some discussion regarding the fine amounts. One of the things that we need to remember as elected officials is that, you know, we can have our own personal opinions and we can have what our view is from our own backyard and from our own bank accounts and from our own standpoint. But you have to look at the corporate boundaries and the people within those boundaries that you are also elected to serve. And one of the things that is different with the city of Temple is that from the year 2000 until the year 2010, the number of 18 to 64-year-olds increased by over 70%. It was a 70% increase in people that were from the young adult stage to right within the beginning of their retirement age. With that being said, another issue with Temple has to do with the cost of living in Temple. When you compare the city of Temple against the national average, if you look at just the average, it looks like Temple is just right below the national average when it comes to cost of living. But that's because our housing market bottomed out. It's because the cost of buying a home in Temple is below the national average. The cost to purchase food, to buy groceries in Temple is above the national average. The cost to transportation, whether it's to purchase a car, whether it's gas, whatever goes into transportation is above the national average. Healthcare is above the national average. However, the cost for a house payment or rent in Temple, the median range, is around $825 a month for your home. So if you have this surge of the population, which is between the ages of 18 through 60s, which you would consider are still making house payments or beginning to make house payments, and you're looking at the fact that for them to make their mortgage payment, it's going to be around $850 a month for the average citizen. When I first became aware of the situation with our fines, it was actually during the lame duck period. I was elected, but I was not sworn in yet. And I was made aware of a situation that concerned me. I had other issues in other areas, and my intent from this is from a human rights standpoint. This is not from a standpoint that has to do with what is legal. I will say this again, a city council member or elected body nowhere in the state of Georgia has the authority to legalize or decriminalize marijuana. What cities were given the power to do in the Georgia state constitution was to dispose of cases that occurred within their corporate boundaries of an ounce or less of marijuana to take that burden off the state. And to do that, it had to be done by ordinance, because anything that has the force or effect or charge by law has to be done by an ordinance. The city of Temple already has this ordinance. I'm not creating an ordinance. The city of Temple adopted an ordinance, and when the previous council chose to adopt the ordinance to come in line with the Constitution to dispose of those cases, they chose to set it at the max amount. Other cities in Georgia didn't start at the max amount. The city of Clarkston was around $600. They were never at $1,000. Other cities are not at the $1,000 threshold. We are. When I began to first ask for some fine amounts, and unfortunately I was not allowed or able to, hopefully a letter from your attorney, I should be able to obtain some of the records I needed, but some of what I got concerned me, and I'm just going to read off, and I want the council to kind of pay attention to this, in the sense that what was given to me when I asked about certain fines is that a first offense for driving under the influence in Temple, $300. The second offense, $600. It takes a third offense of DUI from what I was given to get you to the $1,000 threshold. What I was given when it had to deal with fleeing or attempting to flee the scene. A first offense, minimum fine of $300. Second offense, a minimum fine of $1,000. A hit and run leaving the scene, a minimum of $300. When you get down to possession of less than an ounce, we have no minimum. We say we're going to give you the maximum amount of $1,000. Now, within the city of Temple, you have a median income in the city of Temple of a little over $40,000. The individual income in the city of Temple, the median range is $18,000. Minimum wage per year is $15,000. So before we get into what is a slap on the wrist with a fine, and when I opened this up, I said I wanted to start the fine amount at $75. I would like to stay within the range of $150 to keep the integrity of what I'm trying to do here. Because if you are a citizen in the city limits of Temple and you go by the data that was given to us by the federal government, if you get charged with possession of an ounce or less and you appear before a municipal court, you're going to get a $1,000 fine. You're going to get 6 months in jail and or both. You're going to get one of the two or both. From the data we know that's going to be 1 month if somebody's home. It's going to be 1 month of where they have or do not have the ability to pay their house payment or their rent. We're going to know that that fine is also, if they're making minimum wage or $10 an hour, that's up to 2 days of pay. I don't believe that council members should be legislating what we think is a slap on the wrist, because our bank account does not reflect our decisions. We reflect the decisions of the income and the median status of the people that we're here to serve. So to say that $75 or $150 is trivial, it's not when you look at the fact that the citizens in our community, that could be as much as a day or 2 days of pay. So taking that up, then the second problem that I ran into, which I was afraid could end up being a bigger liability if we did not address our ordinance issue, is one of the other things that I was given directly, was highlighted to say, City of Temple court costs. And what concerned me when I was given a copy of the municipal court cost is that we have got court costs listed for possession of marijuana going up as high as $1,700, which would violate even the state constitutional right for municipal to charge that fee. So I asked, hey, possibly are there added court costs? I was then given something in writing that said, no, we don't do additional court costs. So this has even raised more questions for me as to that fine being left the way that it is currently and the fairness, because it disproportionately affects. I was able to get a really small snapshot, and I'm not sure of the accuracy of it, but if I had looked at just some basic data that was given to me, that was just done on a spreadsheet, that just what I was told, that let's say there were 12 violations. At least 8 of those violations are under the age of 25, which is what I was hearing. This was a lot of younger kids. It was life-altering. It was life-changing. If it's younger adults, if you can't come up with a $1,000 fine, and your choice is to then get put through the probationary system or jail, then you're also running into cases to where is someone being in prison because they can't afford to pay a fine. And that violates other laws on a federal level that I don't want to get into. One of the issues, and I will throw this out here as we begin to deliberate this fine, I had intended to do this a while back. Clarkston made the first move, and like I expressed to some city officials, I was their biggest stalker for a year. Anything and everything that they did on this, from the beginning of their discussions to the very first things that were thrown on the table to the point that they finally ended at, it was a process. And where they came to $75, my reason for starting at $75 was based on the median income for people in the corporate boundaries of Temple and what that would equivalent to in a fine amount. Not what I consider to be a low fine, but what would the residents that I'm elected to serve consider to be an appropriate and justifiable fine. And I believe if we go up to $150, we're still staying within that range. The reason this became important to me to do at the beginning of this year, and I want to throw this out there because one of the things that as an elected official we are entrusted to do is, even if it means looking at other cities and seeing what they're doing and asking ourselves, how would that play out here? How would that play out here? And one of the things that happened in January of this year, it struck me very hard. I'm still upset about it, and it's completely refocused my direction on why there's an urgency for this. But in January of this year, there was an individual who was basically in his vehicle, well, he was in a friend's vehicle. He was in the city limits of Atlanta, and he had rode to the City of Atlanta's public annex building. He is on property that belongs to the City of Atlanta as a passenger. The driver's gone inside. The passenger of the car, another car pulls up. 2 men get out. They're in a sports car. They're in plain clothes. They walk up to his car, and the reason they gave for approaching the car, because they ended up being undercover police officers, was the aroma of marijuana. That ended with that individual shot and killed in Atlanta. The tape was released, which did not show exactly the scene that the police had described. But the only legal reason that is still given, the GBI is now investigating this, and you can watch the film, was the aroma of marijuana. And as I have been struggling with our fine amount and looking at the differentials between our fines, what I have to wonder is, in the city of Temple, could something like that have happened? If as elected body, it's our job to set fines, the ordinance is there, I'm discussing a fine. But if we have the biggest bullseye and the biggest fine that our city drops, and according to what I've got, we're issuing the same fine on someone at $1,000 with possession of marijuana as we are with possession of the controlled substance, and the same fine if we find them delivering or distributing or manufacturing that same amount of drug. So if we're putting this unbelievable bullseye on, this is the biggest fine that the city government's going to tell our police officers to cite, this is going to be the $1,000, this is the harshest penalty that we're going to deliver. We're going to deliver it for an ounce or less of marijuana. What message does that send to your officers? Could you have an officer approach a car with a passenger over the aroma of marijuana? Could it end as badly as it has ended in Atlanta? And I am not going to speak for Atlanta, but I believe that that happening in January, the film being released in February, has everything to do with why Atlanta is also considering a change to their ordinance. This is a way that Temple can be, proactive. I have had nothing but positive responses, and I'm not going to knock the negative. I believe that I've had the positive because people would not be afraid to come and talk to me about their experience because I'm the one that put this on the table. I have had extremely well-educated, professional, knowledgeable people that do have illnesses, and this is not dealing with medical marijuana, but what they have said to me is the oil is almost impossible to obtain. Do I want to take the choice of crossing and trafficking state highways to obtain something? And that's a different discussion. But if you have an area where, look, it's going to happen. The next legislation is going to be, this is a movement that Temple has the ability to be progressive in for once. And I can liken it to alcohol. I can liken it to the fact that years ago, Temple did not want to pass an alcohol ordinance. And the business and the growth came to the other cities who did pass those ordinances before others did. And by the time we got around to doing it, you had a lot of chain restaurants on other exits that were too close to come here. I'm not likening that to this, but I'm saying that there are people who would feel the need to move here who are professional. If you are a teacher, let's take a teacher. I know of a teacher who is not in our county but teaches in a nearby county. A teacher who has a child in Colorado right now who is being treated. Because if that teacher were found in possession here with less than an ounce to treat their child, they could lose their teaching certificate. So it would make a difference on certain people that would relocate here. I believe that. I do believe that the millennials and that group, and if you look at our stats, if you look at the 70% increase from the 2000 census to the 2010 on the generation gap that has moved in here, and the fact that we have kind of fell flat since 2010, our growth, if anything, has almost dipped down a little bit. I think this is a way that we can discuss a fine that is reasonable, that is not going to make someone end up homeless. You have plenty of 20 to 22-year-olds who may get caught with less than an ounce of marijuana that as a 30-year-old would never, ever, determined to ever be around that or in contact with that. And should that be a life-changing experience? I don't necessarily personally believe so. That's my belief. But when it comes to the fine amount, where we're setting the fine amount, in my opinion, especially based on the inconsistencies in which we're charging other fines, we have set ourselves up to encourage harsher penalties and harsher reactions than I believe in a human rights standpoint should be given. And I think this is a way to correct something. We're not violating a law. The governor is exactly right. No city can flounce state law. It will take the legislator to legalize. But this is about setting a fine that is fair, that does not discriminate between classes, that does not discriminate between income. And it doesn't leave it up to a municipal judge to decide. The second part of this is you go to consider the fine. I want you to consider this as a council. Word of mouth is a big thing. And so word of mouth in Temple, if the word of mouth is don't go to Temple Municipal Court, that judge is hard. Let's just say that's the word of mouth that gets out. Every individual has the ability to go into that municipal court and demand that that be transferred over to state. When that happens, Temple collects nothing. We collect zero. So I did a really quick snapshot, or just a little snapshot. So let's say that we had 12 violators in 18 months. Just from the little bit that I was able to get, and this is not a correct full amount, but just out of that amount, 8 bounded over to state anyway. We didn't receive that $1,000. They took it out. So if we set a fine that's consistent, even if the council feels comfortable at $150, if that then is handled in our municipal court, it may actually generate revenue that we were losing over the $1,000 fine because people were maybe getting an easier rap of it with state than they were by going before our municipal court. This is not in any way, shape, or form, has anything to do with any other stops, okay? This has to do with the sole offense is possession of an ounce or less of marijuana. And even if that possession is found to be divided up in a way where scales and you've got all this other paraphernalia in the bag and it's divided up into separate bags, an officer has the discretion to charge an intent clause there. So as we discuss this fine amount, and I want Mr. Osborne to clarify that Clarkston, and I'm going to say something, I am familiar with that area. The DeKalb Market is one of my favorite places to go. East Atlanta Village is one of my favorite places to go. And that's within a few miles of Clarkston. So when you look at there's a liquor store on every counter. No, they're set up like these really quaint communities where there's a lot of different eating establishments and bars, and you can spend the day and you can walk around, and there's a lot of art, and there's a lot of culture, and there's a lot of places where the residents bring their gardens right out front and they have their weekly market. They're really nice places to go visit. Clarkston also has a very large Ethiopian immigration population. And they have been very progressive and proactive, even down to dealing with ordinances that had to do with how do they protect that population after the election this past November. So I don't want to down Clarkston at all. I don't want to bring in their property values. That they have their own set of problems and we have ours. But when I'm looking at what our fine amount is, and compared to other cities who never started with that $1,000 fine, that if we can make this a fine that is able to be paid, that we can keep within our municipal court, and we cannot ruin someone's life over something, then I believe that that's something we need to discuss. So if Mr. Osborne wants to share anything about the meeting and the positive comments that came out of Clarkston, that would maybe help. And then let's discuss fine amounts.
Just a couple of comments. Ms. Manson had asked if I would get some information from Clarkston. I called the city manager there that I've known for a number of years when I visited last Monday. And a lot of comments that have been made here tonight about Clarkston are certainly appropriate. It is a different situation than we have here. But from their standpoint, they're comfortable. The leadership appears to be very comfortable with what they did. The amount of the fine was a compromise between what the mayor wanted to do on $5 for a fine to meeting what the council agreed to with the fine that they charged. And from the standpoint of the city manager and the police chief, their view is that basically their life hadn't really changed as a result of the ordinance. In terms of the crime situation and in terms of the operation of the city.
So then dealing with fine amounts, and that's what I want to discuss, is the fine amounts, and then we can start, scheduling the public conversation and the information and that type of stuff to go toward the ordinance. But as y'all start discussing that, like I said, my take on the $75 to $150 has to do with the median income within the city of Temple. It has to do with the fact that I believe that is something that we would not end up in a situation where we had people imprisoned or we had people in the probation system simply based on the fact that they were not able to pay the harshest fine that we're setting out for anything. So does anybody have any comments on the fine amounts before I read?
I have comments on several things. I can get forward about.
This is a first read of an ordinance. Do we need these fines plugged in here? Do we do that later?
I want to ask if they object to the $75.
Well, normally, what would occur is the first read of the ordinance has a blank as to the amount of the fine. So therefore, there needs to be some discussion as to, yes, sir.
Okay. Well, we're gonna have, hearings on all of this, and people will be able to come and be for it or against it. And I'm trying to move the meeting forward.
Sure. So that's a great point. My comment to that would be, I think you were saying earlier you were going to appoint a committee and then have a
Yes,
public
sir.
hearing. I think the question for the mayor and council tonight is, since we've got issues associated with this, do you want to have the first reading?
Oh, no, I want the first, I called it for $75. We can go with 75. I was just giving them an opportunity before the first read if they wanted to change the fine between 75 and 100. But I called for the $75 fine, so that's fine.
May I be allowed to finish?
Yep, but I called for a $75 fine, so we can go.
The point I was trying to make is whether you want to have the first reading tonight, or whether you, and that would be a vote that you'd have to make, and you've got the issue of the fine amount we just discussed, or whether you want to defer the first read until next month after a public hearing between now and May. That's what your question is, and I think that's the point you need to decide.
Okay. Mr. Walden.
Last month, we made a motion on whether or not to read the ordinance, so we're gonna do the same thing tonight, right?
That would be my understanding of the way you did it.
I'm prepared to make the motion.
Sure.
We've never made a motion to read a budget ordinance. We have a first read, we have the hearings, we have a second read, then we have discussion, motion, discussion. We've never made a motion to have a first read of an ordinance until y'all put that with the charter last month, ever.
There's
We have
no-
the first read and then it goes from there.
Let me be sure we understand something. There's no pulling of anything, okay? You can consider the ordinance or not consider the ordinance. You can have a motion to table the ordinance. You can have a motion to defer the ordinance to the next meeting. That's entirely up to y'all. Whatever motion you want to make, you need to make.
Mr. Walden.
I want to make a motion to take a vote to kill the ordinance and not hear it, not consider it at all from the response that I've had from people calling me yesterday and today, all the way up till the meeting time. That is my motion, making a motion to kill the ordinance,
You're
not
second.
consider it.
You're second.
Second.
Got a second by Mr. Simmons. Any discussion?
Right
Yes,
here.
ma'am.
Okay. In the charter, any council member can call for an ordinance at any time. The ordinance then requires a first read. After the first read, there has to be a second read within 60 days. After the second read of ordinance and after the public hearings and after everything has been published, then you have a motion. You can't kill an ordinance before you've even allowed a first read.
You most certainly
Amen.
can.
How?
No, you can't.
Most certainly can.
How can you kill an ordinance without ever having a first read of an ordinance?
And you're not either.
I know, but I know Margaret Law.
My advice to the mayor and council, as with any other matters, is that you can make a decision procedurally as how you want to handle this ordinance. You have a motion and second, discussion on the motion and second, and vote on that motion. You do not have to read ordinances and go through a second reading before you make any decision on any ordinance. Matters not what it is.
Okay, any more discussion? All in favor, signify by saying aye.
Is that all in favor of not reading the ordinance? Right, and killing the ordinance? That's the motion.
That's a motion. Your vote? Aye.
Opposed?
Okay, wait a minute. Okay, we've got 2 for it. Now, do I hear any opposed?
Opposed?
Okay, that's tied up, sir. Charter states that the mayor can't break a tie on an ordinance.
This ain't approving the ordinance. You can't make a charter that's approving it. You just read it.
The motion is to whether we kill the ordinance, meaning the ordinance would not move forward at all. Your decision is either to vote to break the tie, not vote to break the tie, appoint the committee, which you thought about doing, and the ordinance, the motion would not pass, so that's entirely up to you, Mayor. That's what your pleasure is.
Well, I am going to form the committee. It's an information gathering committee. And I am going to form the committee and let them bring it back. This council can vote to approve the ordinance or reject the ordinance.
So you allow us to read it?
Then let me back up before we get into that. Then the action that would be taken is you are not breaking any tie at this time. You're not going to cast a vote on that matter tonight. And the minutes would need to reflect that. And then if you wish to appoint the committee, you certainly have the right to do that.
He could kill it.
What I wish to do is to appoint the committee, let them hold the hearings of the people of this town. If you're for it, you can come and state it. If you're against it, you give the opportunity to come and state it. And then this council will give the opportunity to approve this ordinance or disapprove this ordinance.
After you get through the first read.
Ma'am?
If you get through the first read,
Break the tie.
you gotta have the
Allow
first
the
read.
read.
Leave it
Allow
next
the
step.
read.
Break the tie.
Keep in mind, the mayor can kill it.
Yeah, he can't.
Right now, the mayor can kill it.
Hey, Mr. Walden.
He's not an idiot.
Mr. Walden.
Yes, sir.
We got the floor here.
Okay, have at it.
No, obviously Penny's running the meeting.
I'm tired of my shit.
Let me, let me make a suggestion. The mayor, the present posture procedurally of the matter is that the mayor wants to appoint a committee. You have that absolute right to do that.
Correct.
Okay? Therefore, I think the next procedure needs to be to appoint the committee. Let's see if we can't get that done, and then let's see where we go from
Okay. Well, I want to appoint the committee of Mr. Grantham and Ms. Rockwell to be on information gathering on this subject, to hold a meeting, and have an information gathering committee for this ordinance. But now, I was under the impression that council members can introduce ordinances.
Sure. And now, that's the matter that has been done. The motion to kill the ordinance prior to introduction has lost. So now it's back to Ms. Ransom, who has, we would need a motion to have the introduction and first read of the ordinance.
Yeah, Ms. Ransom?
I make a motion that we have the first read on the ordinance with a fine at $75 to be read tonight.
Here's a second. Second by Mr. Rockwell. Any discussion? Favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Opposed?
One, sir.
I ain't gonna told you what to say, William.
Break the tie.
So it's your decision, Mayor.
My decision whether she reads this, or will you read this ordinance or not?
Yes,
Read
sir.
it, sir.
Thank you. Thank you.
Boom.
Kill that.
This will be the first reading of the minutes would
Civil
reflect
League can't get
of
this
the
one.
ordinance that would be as follows. This would be an ordinance by the City Council of the City of Temple. Whereas the City Council finds that enforcement of the state law prohibiting possession of less than 1 ounce of marijuana has been inequitable and has fallen disproportionately on certain subsets of the population. And whereas an arrest and/or conviction of the state law offense of possession of less than an ounce of marijuana may present future problems for any person charged with this offense, and its disposition being a potential criminal record for that person. And whereas this ordinance shall be considered a municipal ordinance violation and be accomplished pursuant to citation by appropriate law enforcement authorities of the City of Temple, and whereas OCGA 36-32-6 grants municipal courts concurrent jurisdiction to try and dispose of cases wherein a person is charged with possession of 1 ounce or less of marijuana when such conduct occurs inside a municipality. Now therefore, Be it ordained by the City of Temple and is hereby ordained and established as follows. Section 1. City of Temple law enforcement officers are hereby encouraged by the City Council to issue citations for violation of city code to individuals possessing 1 ounce or less of marijuana rather than arresting such individuals when possession of marijuana is the sole non-traffic offense by the individual observed by the officer. Section 2, it shall be unlawful for any person to possess 1 ounce or less of marijuana within the corporate limits of the city. Conviction of violation of this ordinance shall be punished by a fine of $75. No person convicted of violating this ordinance shall be punished by confinement of any period of time. Section 3. The Code of the City of Temple as contained in Article 2 of Chapter 22 entitled Possession of Marijuana shall stand amended by harmonizing that section or replacing it in its entirety with the provisions of this ordinance. Section 4. It is hereby declared to be the intention of the City Council that the sections, paragraphs, sentences, clauses, and phrases of this enactment are severable. And if any phrase, clause, sentence, paragraph, or section hereof shall be declared unconstitutional by the valid judgment or decree of any court of competent jurisdiction, such unconstitutionality shall not affect any of the remaining phrases, clauses, sentences, paragraphs, and sections of this enactment, since the same would have been enacted by the City Council without the incorporation herein of any such unconstitutional phrase, clause, sentence, paragraph, or section. That is the ordinance for consideration.
That is the first reading.
Yes, sir.
Okay, like I said, I will be pointing Mr. Rockwell and Mrs. Ransom on information gathering to get public input for this ordinance, and it will come back, hopefully it will come back for a second read, and the City Council will have the right to vote for the ordinance or against the ordinance and reject it. How about public hearings? Should we want to set up any of them? We're going to have 2. Okay, ma'am.
I had talked with Mr. Osborne, and I don't know if this will be kept public hearing. Y'all need to decide what's the legalities of that with the city administrator, but we have the senior center reserved for April the 13th at 6:30 p.m. and I will be getting something together for Mr. Osborne to be able to publish and hand out to the public. It'll just be information, people that'll come and talk and bring anyone, get information, ask questions, have an open, controlled debate. I think it'll be good just to get it out there. So after that, as far as your public hearings for the ordinance, I guess you would do that like you normally do.
And I think based on y'all's discussion, and as the mayor said, he's appointing a committee to obtain public input.
Okay.
It's not so much a public hearing as to obtain public.
Okay, when do we want to have the public hearings?
One will be at 6:30 Thursday, April 13th.
Okay, that's going to be an information and
That's
a public
information
hearing.
only, or you want a public hearing then?
Well, I mean, that would be to obtain public input now.
Yep, but not one of the public hearings required for an ordinance. I want that to be more open for the public, not a council.
In terms of meeting the requirements of the ordinance, I would yield to the city attorney in terms of what we need to call one or more of that.
We have been using 2 public hearings on ordinances.
For budget ordinances, I don't know about that.
We can, I would propose, in terms of when we would do it, would be a couple of weeks later. Get past
A couple of weeks later than April the 13th.
We can bring it back by May, that way it'll be resolved.
well, let's see, the 13th, Easter is the 15th, the 15th, 16th, so maybe that next week and the 20th.
That would be great.
Okay, the 20th.
Or around that week, you can get with us.
Okay, so we got that set.
Yes, there'll be a committee In other words, you may not want to have both of them Thursday night, you may want to do one on a Tuesday night or Wednesday night.
And I think what you did before, you did one, the last time you had to do an ordinance, you did one during the day, and you did one in the evening, so whatever works best for you, so that you can manage to get it out published and meet the requirements.
Okay. Okay? Is that got that?
Yep.
Okay. Item number 6, report on plans for Saturday, April 8th, West Georgia Old Days Festival in the City Park from 10 a.m. to 6 p.m., including a Veterans Appreciation Ceremony in the Temple Recreation Department Gymnasium at 5 p.m. Mrs. Etheridge.
The City of Temple will have a booth set up at this event. It's not a city-sponsored event, but they have asked us, Mr. Scott McGuire is hosting this event, and he's asked us to have a table set up there. And Mr. Ricky Watts, who's our code enforcement officer, he is in charge of getting that together. We're going to try to get information out to the community about codes violations and how you can report those. Also, the different departments are going to have information about the rec center and the different offerings that the city has. So we just hope that the community will come out and support this event, which is going to be on April 8th, which is this Saturday.
Okay. Number 7, report on the annual 78-yard sale being held on Saturday, April the 8th, between 8 a.m. and 1 p.m. on 23 Mile Street, Highway between Little Rock and Tallahassee, including within the City of Temple.
Again, that's another event. It's not really a city-sponsored event, but a lot of people in Temple participated in the citywide yard sale last year. And last year, the council did vote to waive the $5 yard sale permit for that event. So if y'all wanted to waive that again, I know we've had people ask about that, so that might be something you consider. And Mr. Osborne did put a resolution in your book to waive the $5 fee for that event if you choose to approve that.
One comment is that, and it's my fault, but actually the date that we're talking about is Saturday, April the 29th. The Bill of Record's got something this Saturday, the 8th, just Bill of Record, but the regular US 78 that will be on Saturday, the 29th, with Bill and promotion. We talked about it's the same. And if you do wish to waive the fee for people with yard sales, we do have the last 2 sheets under that tab is a resolution, which is the same resolution you passed last year. Only thing that's changed is the date. If you wanted to waive the $5 yard sale fee on Saturday the 29th for that 23-mile line event. Okay, we've always waived that yard fee. Everybody's still in favor of that.
Make a motion to
Got a motion by Mr. Walden to approve the waiver of the yard sale. Second by Mr. Simmons. Any discussion? Favor signify by saying aye. Any opposed? Report on plans for City of Temple's participation in the event Easter weekend on Saturday and Sunday, April the 15th and 16th for the Easter Egg Hunt Festival, starting at 2 o'clock at the Center. Egg Hunt beginning at 3. Miss Etheridge.
Basically, the item sums up what's going on. Again, we're having the annual Easter egg hunt, which is going to be the Saturday before Easter, which is the 15th. And we just encourage everyone to attend. We've got area churches that are helping us, also the Temple Police Department, and we've had a lot of community businesses provide donations. So if you'll help us get the word out, it's going to start at 2. The actual Easter egg hunt starts at 3.
Okay. Questions? Number 9, report and plans for Temple's participation in Georgia Cities Week, April the 22nd through the 29th, including annual spring cleanup on Saturday, April 27th. Kristen.
So the last weekend in April is Georgia Cities Week. That's something that the Georgia Municipal Association encourages all cities to participate in every year. So we're finalizing our events. I've got a sample copy of the flyer in your packet. We are having the annual spring cleanup, which we had last year on Saturday, April 22nd. Mr. Everhart's in charge of that. That's again where people can bring their unwanted home goods or garbage, as long as it's not paint or flammable type items. So we're going to start advertising that on our website and Facebook page. And then the other events we have scheduled for that week, which I hope some of the council members can participate in, we are planning a town hall meeting for that Wednesday, which is going to be at 1 o'clock at the senior center. And if you'd like to come to lunch prior to that at 12. I know during the public comments, one of the citizens mentioned they don't feel like they have access maybe or have the ability to talk to a lot of council members. So I'm hoping that most of you, I know it's hard during the day, but some of you can come to that. That'd be a good opportunity for you to be available to meet some of the citizens and answer questions if you'd like. So that's going to be on Wednesday of that week. We are also going to have a voter registration drive again at the senior center. And that Thursday, we are planning to have an open house at City Hall with light refreshments, and again, another chance that hopefully some of the council members can come out. We're going to have city staff available to meet the citizens, and again, it's just another opportunity for citizens to come by and to understand what we do and to have their voice heard and that type of thing. So I'm going to send out reminders, but I do hope that some of you can participate in those events, and we're going to advertise on our website and Facebook page the events and also the event.
Okay, questions? Item number 10, staff report on the implementation of a new building and financial management system for the city of Temple water and sewer operations, including the possible need for any future action to be considered by the city council at this time. Mr. Osborne.
The next tab is heading on it is Casell and related subjects, because we've dealt with this for some months, looking at the looks like we're finally about to make the software conversion for Casell to Harris TBS. I think in my memo indicated that Sarah Hefty had said they were looking at making the switch around April 11th, and they have changed that. I think it's April the 20th. A lot of stuff involved in that they are working on. But if you look past my two-page memo, you'll see a chart that Sarah had prepared. And it basically shows you on the software conversion. We've talked a lot about moving from Harris TBS to Casell, but you also have the credit card processor and handling online payments and the actual handling of the bills. The first one here that we're talking about on the credit card processor, we got a proposed agreement, merchant application and agreement provided by Chase Payment Tech. Mr. McRae, they reviewed that carefully, and I've got a copy of his email attached. But basically, as they say, the major card providers don't change their standard form agreement. All of them have the same type of service agreements and arbitration provisions. We don't have a choice but to sign the agreement as it is. I guess anybody you get is going to essentially be the same agreement. And what I would like, Mr. Mayor, is to get a action of the council tonight that you read in the motion that I was making a report. We might need an action. And we do need the council to authorize you to sign the agreement with Chase Payment Tech. If there are questions, Mr. McRae and I will try to answer those. But basically, it's the same agreement that you don't have with any of the credit card processing. Chase Payment Tech is what Casell basically uses.
I hear a motion.
Motion to authorize the mayor to sign the agreement with the
Motion
Chase
by
Payment Tech.
Mr. Walden, your second. Second, Mr. Timmons, any discussion? Favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? That's carried. Number 11, Stephanie.
I got a couple of more things.
Okay.
Okay, the next part of this is express bill pay, which is the online payments. We've gone round and round on this. Mr. McRae was trying this afternoon. We're not ready to come forward. We have not gotten the answers that we feel like we need from Express Pay. I've given you can look at it later, specifically what Mr. McRae asked them to do, and they agreed to only one of the four things. So we are still working on that, and we'll have to get back with you on it. Okay. The final one is Datamax, and that is who handles the actual mailing of the bills. And we've had problems with this company trying to get them to give us a price and charge their fee. And So a couple of weeks ago, when Ms. Edwards and I met, they ended up, the two ladies, deciding that, you know, while we had all kinds of problems with Harris TVS, there are two parts to Harris TVS, and one part that actually handled the mailing of the bills did a pretty good job. It was the calculations that were given to them that we had the problems. So, not coming with you tonight asking for a decision, we'll get back with you, but I will say that based on where we are at this time, we are looking at that as an option to stick with Harris, the division that does the actual mailing of the bills. And I think that we'd be better off if we got questions sticking with them. We'd always change. If we change to somebody new, then we cross that bridge and maybe we decide we wouldn't. So that's the report. We will be coming back to you dealing with the actual mailing of the bills and the online payments.
Okay.
That's my report.
Number 11, staff report on parking plan for retail store proposed for location on Carrollton Street, just south of Temple City Hall. Mr. Austin.
Make a long story short, we have been talking with our city engineer about needing a development code for the city of Temple. What has happened in years past is they've simply relied on the specifics included in the City of Douglasville Development Code, and that's the standard that you have gone by, but you have not actually adopted one of your own. We ran this by our city attorney in Mr. McRae's office. They looked at what we were talking about and basically told us that we didn't have an enforcement capability on this. Now, I'm not really concerned about this particular one because Dollar General has, I think, a pretty proven track record in terms of the number of parking spaces they need. And they are wanting to have 35 spaces, and their actual retail space would require 43. So they're looking for that kind of reduction. Now, if you look at the total square footage in that building, that would require 53, but part of that is their storage space. So, but this is basically reporting to you. We're trying to work with Hughes Ray. We talked about it a little bit in the budget thing. We hope later this year to have a parking ordinance as part of the development code or in the zoning code. We don't have it at this time. So that's where we are. And if there are questions, Mr. McRae, I'll be glad to try to respond.
Okay. You'll keep us posted. Okay, number 12, staff report on correspondence from the U.S. Environmental Protection Agency, EPA, concerning the demolition in 2013 of the former Sewell Manufacturing Company in Temple. Mr. Oliver.
Just a very brief report to you. I know that this is a subject that's been talked about from time to time, and recently the EPA did make contact with the Carroll County government, raising some questions about the demolition of the structure back in May of 2013. We simply received a copy of it, and we will be monitoring this and keeping in touch with the county government as they look at making their response, and we'll be back to you later as things materialize, but didn't want to not say anything to you and then you could hear about it somewhere else. In fact, we hadn't said anything to you about it. That's all I got.
Mr. Simmons, got any
I'd like to know, is that copy of that letter available to us?
Yes. I'll put it in your boxes tomorrow.
Okay.
Thanks.
Any other
Yes.
Happy Easter. We don't see you before then. All of you.
Yes, I'd just like to say thank you to one of the new faces that I saw here today, and that you just keep the April the 13th at 6:30 in the back of your mind. Invite people to come with you if you have an interest in the ordinance that's on the table, and move from there. Thank you.
my closing comments is, Mr. Rockwell, you've done a good job with Founder's Day last year. Would you like to head up to Founder's Day this year? Sure. Okay. I should have more time this year to help you, and if anybody else wants to help Mr. Rockwell, and call on us, and I will be glad to do more than I did last year. Anything else? I hear a motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn.
Second. All in favor, signify by saying aye. That's carried.
Eddie, you in town tomorrow?
Yeah.
We're gonna need, we need to get you to sign this. What do you need? Before you go, come to sign.
As long as it's the same thing they signed, because they signed, they were gonna do it. They're gonna change the contract. Yeah, they did it. It's like
It would be a miracle, it's not the same, because you just played it through.
Thank you for standing here